Okay, great. And one thing I want to check just before we start, actually, what I'll do is I would like for you, Leonardo, if you can, introduce yourself,
Sure.
introduce a little bit about your role at Brotherhood Crusade, and a little bit more about the Brotherhood Crusade and the Danny Bakewell Enterprises, so that we get a more global understanding of all the things you guys have in your universe. And
Sure.
I'm gonna go off video for a second. I'm gonna check to see if I can find some of these other people.
Okay, no problem. So thanks, Kevin. So yes, I'm Leonardo Kablayan, and I'm the director at Brotherhood Crusade, the Youth Source Center. So Brotherhood Crusade overall is a nonprofit organization in South Los Angeles. We've been around since the civil rights movement. So we've been around for over 50 years and first started off as a civil rights organization, addressing some of the things that you can imagine if you know about what was happening in the 60s. And then transformed about 16, 17 years ago into total youth development, still focused on the South Los Angeles area, but wanted to focus specifically on all the issues surrounding our youth in South LA, primarily African American youth, right? Although we've broadened our scope to Black and Brown youth, right? And the things that we do, because youth development is kind of a broad term, the things that we do is work with our youth to, one, transform their mindset. And so talking to them about the things that confront youth on a day-to-day basis, having a good understanding of not letting others tell you who you are, but to have a good understanding about who you are, whose shoulders you stand on. So understanding, who came before you, all the great folks that made a lot of strides, made a lot of sacrifices, et cetera, all for you to understand your history and understand your background so that nobody can tell you that certain things you're not able to do certain things. You don't have the capacity to do certain things, or buying into some of the stereotypes that they would have you see and believe. And so we set that mindset. And then once that mindset is set, then we go into specific things that are going to help you, one, successfully compete and graduate in academics, whether that's high school, trade school, or college, 2 or 4 year college. And then two, as you're going through that, understanding what kind of careers you might be interested in pursuing. And so, of course, the more you're exposed to, the more resources that are made available to you, the greater your opportunities for selecting, an appropriate career path. And so we do a lot with partnering with a number of different folks that are our corporate sponsors, our nonprofit sponsors and partners, our community sponsors and partners, in helping to just expose our youth to as many resources, as many experiences as possible. We have a curriculum that we focus on. We also partner with the city, so we do programming that are funded by the city and by the county. But in addition to that, we have additional kind of subsidized programming or auxiliary programming, where we have specific people from different industries come in and talk to our youth about industries. We have panel discussions. We have partnership with practically every sports team that's in the LA area, that exposes them to, the different careers in sports and entertainment, besides just being on the court or being on the field. So folks can understand that you can manage that, you can own that, you can, do the accounting for that, you can do the marketing for any of those industries, things of that nature. So that's pretty much what we're about. And that's why, Kevin, we're really interested in partnering with you, because we know that, especially in Los Angeles, we're pretty much the mecca for the creative economy. And that's not just nationally, but globally. Everything that is run by the creative economy is run out of here, or has tentacles here, right? And so if we're looking for careers to introduce our youth to, if we're missing out on anything in the entertainment space or any other creative industries, then we're missing the bar with regards to introducing them to jobs of the present and also jobs of the future. So
Yeah.
I think hopefully that answers your question. I mean, we've got 3 locations. We service youth anywhere from the ages of 10 years old to 24 years old. We have a gang youth reduction program, our GRID program that's run out of our corporate office on Slauson. We have a department called BYMOC, so Boys and Young Men of Color, that totally focuses on African-American young men and their specific needs. It's kind of broadened a little bit, opening it up to Black and Brown young men based on our demographic here in Los Angeles. And then we have our Youth Source Center that's located on the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson.
Wow.
Not Crenshaw and Slauson, but Crenshaw and Vernon. I'm sorry.
Right. Okay, I don't even know where to start, but I wanted to make this more of listening and learning what you could share with us about things that I may have missed. I know you guys are a giant, and Danny Bakewell is a giant in LA as well as the country, in many areas of interest that I have, especially in the historical timeline, because that's what I am. I'm an enthusiast of African-American military history, but American history and all the things that create timelines and geography research, so that we can put together media properties that allow the timeline and the geography to be researchable with new tools. And all of the things that I'm doing now is to kind of call my interest and enthusiasm into career pathways and all the things that connect in between, like processes, like pedagogy, like all the things that I believe are missing in the classrooms and the workforce centers that I know of, is what I'm trying to do in my lifetime, and making an attempt to do pilot projects so that we can figure out where is there a coalition of the willing to try something different, to try something innovative, try to find a way to work outside of the margins of things that maybe have structure, maybe have worked, but aren't producing the kind of measurable results that I know that we could have if we were working smarter along the ways of creating something called a smart pipeline. Pipelines are great, but how do we really make sure that at the end of the funnel, we have a product that was engineered and managed by people who were the best and brightest minds, as well as capable of putting all their resources into that pipeline. And obviously everybody has agendas, but I think, the thing that we're trying to do at our organization is to underpin everything with mentorship. It's a very little used term that I believe if people understood what mentorship means, to me, is that it means ultimate sacrifice, volunteerism, and people who have eminence, who have presence, who have big ears, big hearts, and little mouths. And so very few of the people that we've met along the way fit that archetype, but they could. And the goal for me right now is to try and figure out what we can do using futuristic tactics and techniques, as well as tools, software, hardware, to make sure that by the time these people get of age, get to competitiveness, we're ahead of the curve in understanding where career, workforce, where the economy is going to be, and really how they can actually be ahead of anything that they're being exposed to in the classrooms or even social media, how that stuff can be shared with them from people who don't normally give up this information to the ether, but are willing to give it to people who are prepped and primed for opportunities that require precision, 100% competency, and things that require people to learn, think, and do differently than maybe what they've been trained to do. So I've got a couple of people on the call, or part of my core team, and one of them I want to introduce to has challenged me and our staff to make sure that everybody believes that our candidates can get 100% competency of anything that they're trained on. But how do we, achieve 100% competency?
Mhm.
And Rick, if you can, this is my assertion that you can help us change the mindset of all the instructors, trainers, and the faculty about getting people to that standard of 100% competency. If we have the right content and the right training, what 100% competency can do to be a game changer. So Rick, if you can share with Leonardo about what your contribution is to helping me, agnostic of what the content or the training is, get to that place.
Okay, if I could, Kevin, if I could ask Mr. Leonardo a couple of questions on the curriculum that you spoke about. Two questions. Number one is, how was that being delivered to the audience? And number two, what measure of success was utilized in measuring the comprehension and application of that curriculum in the marketplace?
Sure. So both good questions. So the curriculum is one that was developed by one of our consultants here at Brotherhood Crusade, and it's basically a multi-module curriculum that begins with mindset change. So addressing things like just individual attitudes, understanding your background, and understanding whose shoulders you stand upon, self-actualization types of things. And then we go into, because our ultimate goal is to create folks on a pathway to a successful career, right? And so we go into things that we know that are going to be essential, one, in the search for a career, two, to be able to land a job and begin your career. And then how do you sustain yourself and then grow within that career, right? And so there's a lot of emphasis on etiquette. There's a lot of emphasis on showing of gratitude. There's a lot of emphasis with regards to, the technical stuff of writing resumes, interview skills, things of that nature. But then also, once in the workplace, how do you conduct yourself? How do you develop a certain level of accountability and responsibility? How can you be dependable in your job? How do you always set yourself up to try to do the best job that you can possibly do, so that when it comes time for you to move within the organization, you're considered for that raise, you're considered for that promotion, et cetera, et cetera. And so we walk through a number of those modules, checking through to see if they're grasping and mastering those skills before we move on. And then once mastery is identified, then we move to the next level and the next level. And almost in parallel, because we're associated with the city, there's an opportunity to, one, go through what they have as a life skills course. That's only for 20 hours. Our program there's no timeline attached to it, because, I think the education system does a good enough job of just passing folks through, whether they're prepared or not. So we want to make sure that they're prepared, but we utilize the paid opportunities in the training curriculum that's available through the city to get them started. And then an additional 100 hours is available to them for an internship. And so sometimes that internship could be on a work site. Because of COVID, occasionally or often those internships are virtual, especially for those that are still in high school, because you've got school to manage, and that's the ultimate goal, is to make sure that they graduate high school, right? But on occasion, there's opportunities for them to complete those 100 hours with, a various work site that's been identified. We have a process for signing them up and getting work site agreements set up, so it's all formal. And those sites can be based on what we're finding out while we've been working with the youth, placing them based on what their interests might be or what their skills might be. And so we spend a lot of time in that first 20 hours and some of the other curriculum that I talked about in really getting to know the youth, helping them identify what their skills are, what their interests might be, because oftentimes youth come to us and that's the furthest thing from their mind. One of the things that really attracts them is that they're going to get paid for 120 hours, and that's not even the goal. I mean, it's nice to get paid for 120 hours of training and internship, but really the goal is to transform the individuals and put them on a pathway to a successful career and something they're going to enjoy and something that they're going to excel in. So, and like I said, we have various ways of gauging whether they're ready or not. If they're not ready,
Kevin, can you hear
I
me?
want to put somebody in a situation where they're not going to be of benefit to the employer or to the work site, and they're not going to be
I keep dropping.
No, it's not.
Can you hear me,
It's
Kevin?
Leonardo, I think it's Leonardo that's freezing. Leonardo, can you hear us? You're freezing up a little bit there. Yeah, so it's not you, Rick.
Okay.
So, okay, so so he dropped off. So when we get him back on, I know where you were going with measurement or what processes were they using to get that 100% competency. So to see what we can do to cut through anything to ask him if they were open to a new tool set to get to that 100% competency. Because I didn't, okay, here we go. Leonardo? Okay. Okay, you're muted, Leonardo. There we go.
all right.
There,
Sorry
there
about
we go.
that.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
we lost about maybe 2 to 3 minutes of you before you dropped off. You were freezing up, but I think we got the gist of what Rick's question was about the pillars.
Actually, I'd like to follow that up, Kevin. I heard the curriculum. The only metrics that I was heard before he dropped off was that I guess two. One was that they got paid for 120 hours, and the second one was graduating high school. Is that the only metrics that was utilized in the assessment of whether the program was successful or not? Or do you have any hard data that you can go back to and mine to see exactly what that success rate was?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things we look at is placement. After they go through that 120 hours, the goal isn't for them to, to finish the internship, but the goal is to prepare them to be able to move on to a part-time or full-time job on a pathway towards a middle wage earning position, right? So if they haven't achieved part-time or full-time employment, then we're tracking to see what they need to do to accomplish that goal. If they have, we're gauging to see how they're doing on a quarterly basis, if they made it to 6 months, or if they've stayed employed for a year. So we're keeping in contact with them. We're tracking whether they've moved up in that position that they were initially placed in, all of those things. So we stay in contact. We have case managers here and job developers here that are both handling their individual needs and also their career needs. So job developers are not just communicating with the youth, but they're also communicating with the work site, looking to see if how they're performing, areas where they're shining and areas where they might need improvement. We're also, quite frankly, talking to those employers because we don't just want to place one person there, but we're looking at, expanding those opportunities. So we're stewarding the relationship there. And then we're also talking to the youth. Are you still continuing to enjoy being here? Are there other things that you've seen an interest in? Do you need some assistance in other areas in the job? So, we're constantly staying engaged using our job developers and case managers to ensure success for the youth.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
And Rick, one of the things that I heard that I definitely want to pivot to is how can we bring in not just tools, metrics, data, but how do we try to make the experience of success something that we can create more student voice and agency in? Because I do understand that data is good, but how do we create a way for those students who come through your program to either come back or to create some blog or journal to talk about what success that they've had, so that either storytelling or that content can be shared in a channel or in some messaging to all the people concerned? Because that's one of the things that we've wanted to do when we worked in the community colleges, when we wanted to work in the high schools. Notwithstanding some of the requirements are the things that prevented students to be on camera or to be in front of a microphone. But how do we take their story and their successes or even failures to the marketplace of people who want to know, what are these students feeling and how do they share it peer to peer?
Yeah,
So,
I think that's great. I mean, you brought up a couple of things that resonate. Some of the things that we do, I mean, we're pretty open. I mean, we're always looking at different ways of connecting with youth, because everybody's going to engage based on what their interests are, based on their interactions and other factors, right? And so we're always looking for innovative ways to engage our youth and to, quite frankly, teach them the skills of being able to communicate better, on their behalf and to be able to speak and present and things of that nature. So we have a couple of events that really don't even require you being officially enrolled in the program that kind of work at that. One is something that we call our Cyber Career Cafe. And so that's where we really have youth have an opportunity to investigate different industries, and we'll bring in folks from various industries in different formats to come talk about what it is they do, to talk about their pathways to getting to where they're at, to talk about some of the opportunities that might exist at the different organizations or companies that they work for, which is just planting seeds of all types, with the youth. And typically they're folks that they can relate to, so they look like them. They have similar stories like they have, but they, might come from South LA, went to Dorsey High School, went to Cal State Long Beach, and when they were growing up as youth, they had tough times with gangs or had problems with mental illness or whatever. We try to get folks that can share those types of experiences, so it makes it real when they start talking to them about how you can aspire to some of the careers and stuff that we're currently at right now. So Cyber Cafe is really interesting. It's a good engagement point for folks like yourself that just want to kind of see what we're doing and begin to, interact with some of our youth. And quite frankly, if you have youth, have them engage in some of our programming as well. The other thing we do, we have what we call our men's and women's group, where we understand that there might be specific areas of conversation or need where people feel more comfortable in talking to their gender aligned groups, as opposed to talking in a co-ed environment. And so we're changing the format this year where we're starting it off as a co-ed group and then breaking off into men and women's kind of cohorts, and then reconvene to talk about what we talked about. So we'll pick topics of interest. We're going to format it so it's youth-led and youth facilitated. Just the main thing of just learning to communicate. Our youth deal with a lot of different barriers, as you well know. And so in order for you to move forward, you've got to figure out how to deal with those barriers, how to deal with those circumstances and things of that nature. So we really encourage developing, tools and mechanisms that allow you to be able to do that. And so one of the things that I liked about what you said is learning how to tell their story via blogging or other means. We have, and I invite you to come down to our facility, when it's convenient for you, and I'll take you on a tour. But one of the things we have is a room that was initially set up to teach kids how to do radio broadcasting. So we partnered with KJLH Radio, and one of their DJs came in here once a week to just run our kids through the technical aspects, the production aspects, the presentation aspects of broadcasting. And it was a real good program. And so because of COVID, it kind of went dormant for a while. So we're going to bring that back, but it's going to be tweaked a little bit towards podcasting, right? So teaching kids the fundamentals of podcasting, but more importantly, just teaching them the nuts and bolts of what that is, and in a lot of cases, an opportunity to create some income for yourself, right? And so I think I mentioned it when we had our first meeting that was something that I, would love to investigate with you. But I think
yeah, I'm bursting with ideas on how to create a pilot with an organization who, I'm a big believer that if we create a pilot and it shows some modicum of success with one organization, then we can leverage and create more believers in other organizations who don't have interoperability or collaboration as part of their DNA. We can get people to jump on a bandwagon. And so we've always thought of creating a commercial model for success for young people, as opposed to trying to create a pilot program that's based on theory, concept, and hope. So the tools that we want to use are the tools that people are making money. They're being futuristic in understanding where the industry is going. And case in point, we believed in virtual training, distance learning years ago, because we realized you can move more information than moving your body, and you can integrate it into traditional ways to teach and learn. But people just weren't ready for it because they were locked in silos that again, if they couldn't author the change, if they couldn't integrate it into their government, it wasn't going to happen. But now we've been brought to our knees, and I do now realize that there are other things that we know on the horizon that people can be integrating to virtual, to remote learning, that need to be integrated into the way that students can do the DIY, as well as to understand where those growth industries are and those careers are 5 years from now. So I've been working with companies and going to conferences that give people exposure to these more futuristic things. And so I've been really following where streaming is going. And so yesterday I had Dana and two of my other grad students on a call with a broadcast company who's using video, voice, and data over internet protocol to kind of outdistance where Zoom is. Everybody's zoomed out.
Mhm.
Everybody's podcasted out. And how do we start to look at ways for people to not only execute events, experiential learning, presentations in a way where you can reach one to many or many to many, but how do you make money in it? Where are the careers? Where are the roles? Where are the things that people can start to understand and see themselves in that process of taking this on? Not just because it's streaming, but because it's the way that people really can get more interaction with one another, and ways that are more meaningful than we can ever imagine, and where it's going to become almost required, where people start to look at the economies of scale and how people just globally, not just how we do it in LA or around the country, are now we're able to reach each other.
Mhm.
And we want our students, we want our people to be exposed to that before they're run over or it's run around them, because it's all about again exposing the people things where they can make informed choices, and those informed choices have to be brought to them by people they can trust.
Mhm.
And so we created something called Brown Bag TV, which is a student generated television program. But to deliver
Okay.
that TV program, people have to learn all the tricks, and the trades of how to get a product on air. Um, how they can actually create something that has the interactivity, as well as the open sourceness, so as to bring in other technologies and not be locked in or married to one system. And so that's what Rick's been helping me do, is to understand what over the top television is. Have you heard that term before?
I have not, no.
So Rick, we were discussing over the top television with our group and how it could help to bring a new curriculum, a new career pathway, and how people could learn where things are going on YouTube and where they're going in podcasting. And so over the top TV is not a new term, but it's one that I think needs to be investigated by people who want to get better at understanding how to exploit uh, this explosive area for anybody who wants to get in um, and have their own channel, their own, you know, their own audience, their own way to control what they can control. So,
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that, Kevin, because if you're not delivering the content or the curriculum through an audio and a video or audio and video format, you're going to lose a certain percent of your potential audience, because the audio learners are not necessarily going to see it or understand it, and definitely wouldn't be able to apply it if they're having to read it off of a page. So we can deliver, and Mr. Zig Ziglar convinced me years ago that the mind is going to learn much better if it sees, if it hears, and if it applies the content, whether it's a curriculum or, like I've told you many times before, Kevin, it doesn't matter whether you're filling a salt shaker or building a V8 engine. What the training system that we had developed years ago was able to do was to deliver that content with 100%, not a 99%, but 100% competency of the content that was being delivered to the student. And that supplied many different things that we can come back and talk about, as far as the competency goes. But as far as the OTT, we see millions of people using the tools such as Zoom or YouTube or Vimeo or whatever, with very limited capabilities. So with Silo and Persona, what we've been able to do is we are the provider or the backbone of the HBCUs. If you go to hbculeaguepass.com, you'll see the ability to visit virtually each one of those schools that have posted their content on our platform. You can not only just get a
Excuse me,
virtual
Rick.
tour.
Excuse me,
I'm
Rick,
sorry?
did you say HBCU League Pass?
hbculeaguepass.com. Yes, sir.
LEAGUE?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, if you'll go there, you can put in the search bar and search any one of the HBCUs. We are the backbone and the provider for that not the content, but for the streaming ability. We provide them their own channel. It's unlike a YouTube channel because really you're just posting video on demand on a YouTube channel, and then people can go back and view that, but there's no accountability there. With the ability to stream television stations, we are the backbone for quite a few television stations. And currently, we can do what it takes CNN or ABC, NBC, Viacom, Comcast, whatever, hours to do, we can do in about 15 minutes. So it saves a lot of time. The user interface is intuitive. You could create your own channel, stream it 24 hours a day. You could take different content and schedule it through our EPG or the electronic program guide, and schedule days or weeks or months of content that would continuously stream. Now, once you take that ability and then put it into a comprehensive training program that, like I said, it doesn't matter whether you're filling a salt shaker or building a V8 engine. We were taught years ago, and again by Mr. Ziegler, that we needed to break our curriculum or content up into bite-sized modules. You're only going to keep the attention span for so long. So we would stream 3 to 10 minutes of streaming video from an authority in that field or subject matter. And that was the first step. And all of this is tracked on the back end. So once you complete the visual or the viewing of that content, that put a check mark in the back office. And then we sent you the second step, which was downloading first-person affirmation documentation to support the video that you had just watched. After that check box was checked in the back office, then we sent you a test or a task associated with that content that must be completed to 100% competency before we gave you the key to move on to the next module. So, and again, it didn't matter whether that particular content or curriculum had 2 hours in it or 500 hours. It wouldn't matter. We broke it down, put it in first-person affirmation documentation, and then associated a task or test. So we were walking the student or participant down a primrose path. Put your foot in step number 1, then step number 2, then step number 3, and there's no way that that student could go from step 1 to step 3. So we were controlling the content, which allowed quite a few things to happen. Number one, if you were trying to deliver content that you needed responsibility for, or the participant to accept the responsibility of, say, a policy or procedure, or to avoid making false claims in the field if it's medically associated, then through that content, you could make sure through the process that that participant had accepted the responsibility of it that it was not the company's responsibility anymore because that information had been, delivered to the participant. It also allowed us, and I know you guys probably have never done this, but I used to work with a lot of egotistical trainers. And you would get one trainer that would say one thing, and the same trainer or different trainer on the same content would say it totally different and leave parts out or add their own associations in. So it allowed us to standardize the message that was being conveyed to the participant and gave us accountability, 100% accountability, with drill down capabilities on the data of the success of that program. So I think that's probably created quite a few questions, Kevin, but
it has. And what I wanted for Leonardo to do is to open his mind to the possibility that we were going to offer up something that could be game changing using voice, video, and data, because the capability of using voice, video, and data makes the learning experience of 100% competency more compelling, because they obviously are learners using brain function that sees video, voice, data, animation, and other software to engage and activate them. So this is the way to give them a way, we call it challenge-based learning, so that you can get to performance-based learning. And that 100% competency is something that's 100% achievable by learners and content that's delivered to them in a way that there's no excuse for people not being able to prove, if they're engaged, if they want it bad enough, that they got it. And this data is empirical. It's not something that can be fudged. And I think more hirers, more partners want people who can, because we're in an evidence-based society, and people want not just the experiential, but they absolutely want evidence that these people scientifically got it. And so that's what we want to challenge, that our students and our communities can do it, and we need to have that capability.
Absolutely.
To outpace anybody else that says they can't do it.
Absolutely. And so, some of the things that Mr. Leonardo addressed previously was, and I have to give credit back to my 4th grade math teacher, because my wife is currently a teacher in the public school system, so I can speak with authority on this as well. We're just passing these kids, without any concern of their comprehension of the content that really should be required for them to get a passing grade, just to keep up with some political agenda or metrics that is, I'll say, false.
Yeah, politically driven.
And absolutely. So my 4th grade teacher only had, now I'm fixing to make a strong statement, and think about this. She only had straight A students. Now, I don't know that you could address another teacher in the public school system today that could say that, or probably ever has, except her. And her thought process was that her responsibility in that classroom was not to pass or fail you. It was to pass you and make sure that you understood the content that she was placed in that classroom to provide to that student. So we would take a math test, and guys, I was not, I was not one of her best students for sure. But if she gave us a math test and it had 50 questions on it, and I answered 25 of them wrong, she didn't give me an F. She gave me my paper back and sent me back to my desk to get the ones that I got wrong corrected.
Mhm.
And if she had delivered the correct content for me to understand how to answer that question correctly, then it was a failure on my part, not on hers, if I didn't answer it correctly. So I continued that path from her desk to back to my desk until every one of those questions was answered correctly, and I understood the content that she was put in that classroom to deliver to me. So, I mean, that was monumental in the foundation of what was used to create the training program. Is I don't care what we're teaching you to do, if we've taken it to another level of the classroom, because it's even much more effective and efficient to deliver that content over OTT, because number one, it provides a lot of people a lot more flexibility. If I was if I was as bad of a student today as I was then, I might want to go out and play all day and not really go to class. Well, we got a few students doing that today, but what if they could go out and play all day, come back in the time frames that they would prefer to take that content, and do it at night? I mean, you know, if you don't have a time factor, OTT can make that happen, because we can stream that or VOD that content 24 hours a day. So
Video on demand.
it gave us the accountability. It took the in a lot of applications for enterprise systems, it gave us the ability to take that responsibility off of the company of false claims or misrepresentation, and put it directly on the participant.
And so, Leonard, I know we've chewed through all of your time. What I want to do is I definitely want to meet with you or do a site visit as soon as possible. I know exactly where you are. We were engaged with the JP Morgan Chase folks in using their facility to do meetups and to do mini production and mini theater over there in their center. It didn't work because of COVID and many other factors, but what it is I want you to do is take a look at your calendar.
Okay.
To see if we can do this visit soon, but also to look at the end of Black History Month, February 28th. I'm going to use the City Club in LA, downtown LA. I'm a member, and they've given me the facility to use in doing experiential learning. I'm going to use a screening room there, and there's smaller breakout rooms to do some of the challenge and performance-based learning on exposing students to over-the-top television and broadcast challenge performance programming, so that we can create student-generated content where the students will learn more about workforce and learn more about some of these digital media career pathways in bite-sized pieces, and be able to use mentorship to expose them to professionals who they can look over their shoulder as they're not only learning, but earning ways for them to actually deliver product on a bi-monthly basis. Because these publications, these blogs, if they're not newsworthy, if they're old, stale stuff, no one's going to ever consume it, especially the students themselves or their peers. So on the 28th, I sent you some information, but I want to talk to you a little bit about whatever role you can play in helping us get the right students there on the 28th. As long as they have a Vax card, we can address them on some of the things that will be launched on a bi-monthly basis.
Okay.
And we're going to do a lot of things before the 28th with a group of students. Dana is one of them. She just graduated from Biola. She's 21 years of age. But I'm teaching them how
Congratulations.
to plan and produce this event. So they will, learn as event planners. They will learn the business of event planning, production, and all the things that they will get a chance to not only get a credit and portfolio and certification for, they will be able to stack these things in real time. And my goal is to be able to get them not only, placed, but to be able to have the power of choice if they want to create their own brands, their own pilot projects, but definitely be able to take on clients so that they can teach other people, especially small businesses in the South LA area, how to
Well,
create their own space.
Okay. Vinyl gloves? No, no. Sorry.
So look for this one sheeter. Dana's actually going to be putting the Eventbrite, the one sheeter together and helping, to make sure that all of our partners can understand how they can participate with their students as well as their initiatives inside of this thing we're calling the Coalition, of the Willing. But the City Club LA, February 28th, sports, entertainment, and media will be the focus. Those career pathways in sports, entertainment, and media. And
Okay.
so we will.
What's the demographic? I mean, what's your ideal candidate for showing up at this event?
Well,
If
Makita
college
has given me
age?
the challenge of trying to take the 8,000 people in her database, 18 to 24, and see what we can do to expose them to something like streaming curriculum. Because she said that they're not interested in doing a lot of the coding and engineering, and they don't see any end state for those kinds of career paths. But we'll introduce to them streaming as a career path and an overarching understanding that inside of streaming, there is engineering, there is coding, there's administrative, there's business, there's all kinds of other things that they don't know are part of everything that they enjoy today. But streaming is something that I'm making sure that all of my people are going to be proficient and understand how to stream something that they can stand behind, stand up, and get better at bringing other young people, other peers into being able to show them how they did what they were able to do to create their own over-the-top television channel.
So all good stuff, Rick. You kind of made my head explode, man. It's like too much info, all good info, but really good stuff. I can see why.
It's impossible, Leonardo. Rick and these guys are in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They are the people who are exploding Black Wall Street in Oklahoma right now.
Yeah, let me share something with you, Mr. Leonardo. You mentioned the civil
Rick,
civil
just
rights.
call me Leo, please.
Okay, Leo.
Call me Leo, please.
We are on. In fact, I'm standing in Black Wall Street. We have several facilities here in the United States and in 6 different countries. I'm just right across the railway from Greenwood. So, and it wasn't too many weeks ago. You mentioned the civil rights movement. Mr. Jesse Jackson was in our office, and I think the response that you just gave me about the explanation, he was blown away with it. So we actually created a lot of this for the underserved. We can guarantee that the student is not only comprehends, but is successful. Now, we can't do anything if he quits, okay? We would have to put him in another program for that. But as far as delivering the content of any curriculum that you want to deliver, if the student is willing to participate, we can guarantee his success.
So I'm gonna give you a one-sheeter, and then
Okay.
Dave will send you more information on the activity. But we definitely want to partner with the Brotherhood Crusade and a select group of your students that we can integrate into our project, and they will be working under young people like Dana, Shoni, and Cameron, who were on the call yesterday.
Yeah.
And so, I think the first step is just for us to get you more information so that you can see if you can pivot. This is the last day of Black History Month, and we just wanted to make sure we didn't miss an opportunity to showcase our students and some content. I'm the manager of the world's largest collection of African-American military memorabilia of Buffalo soldiers. And so we're going to showcase a lot of that stuff. We've got some athletes, blockchain management. We're going to be talking about that and all the things about NFTs, all the growth areas that I think are going to take the news cycle by storm. We're going to focus on those opportunities inside of these things that you know, we want to demystify for people. So
Kevin,
yeah.
you don't think, you know, they're going to explode
yeah, well,
and take
again,
over.
we just want to reduce some of the collateral damage from the explosions.
Right, there you go.
So that's kind of what we're doing. So we're doing a lot, but it's a launch point for something we want to do on an ongoing basis inside of the City Club. And that's where we want people to see where they can actually get the professional development. They can dress, they can show up on time, they can get their attitude, you know, adjusted for meeting people who are business minded and business like, and mentors to give them some real, you know, some, as they say, real models instead of role models.
And Kevin,
Absolutely.
one thing I should probably include in that real quick is this is all done on Silo Cloud and Persona. And it also is, I'm going to say, is a replacement. Okay. I'll fix to make a pretty profound statement here. It is a replacement for Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, QVC, Amazon, Google, a complete one-stop shop for social networking as well. We can allow each one of those students to have their own Silo Cloud account. And that becomes a one-stop shop, because instead of having to go to all those different platforms, you can go to your persona and post your content. And with one push of a button, it distributes it to all of those platforms.
Right. And Leonardo, so see if we can sit down for lunch or for coffee, and then I'll break down some of the first steps for you guys to catch up in this race. We've been talking to quite a few people in LA City and LA County. I won't mention their names, but they are investigating ways for their students and their projects to get a Silo Cloud channel and to get up to speed on the power of choice. Because again, we don't want to leave anybody behind, but we got to give them a chance to be able to understand it's coming.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
So I was thinking, if you're available on Friday.
I am.
Friday at 10.
Okay.
We can meet here, and then I can show you what we have here and sit down and talk. You know, I have to digest a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. So again, I just wanted to be able to look at the 28th of February as some place where you can take those little bits and bytes and figure out how you see yourself inside of the 28th, and all these other things will unfold. Okay.
Absolutely.
You know, but they're all things that I believe you guys are ready for. I mean, again, I've known of Donovan Green, who sponsored my organization for many years. He was a champion of Brotherhood Crusade, but he never gave me the opportunity to bridge with you guys. So, you know, this is a situation whose time has come.
Well, Leo, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure meeting you. And Kevin, thank you so much for the additional invite. I'm going to have.
These are the guys. If they believe it, everything will cascade down.
Okay, fantastic. Dana, it was nice to see you again. Kevin, I've got to jump. You got my number. Thank you, buddy.
Okay,
nice to meet you, Rick.
All right.
Nice to meet you, sir.
We'll see you at 10 o'clock, Leonardo. So I'll just show up I'll just be out in the little lobby where JP Morgan Chase and you guys are at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, so we're right next door to the Chase.
I know I've never been up, but I know exactly where I need to be. So I'll see you at 10 o'clock Friday. And I won't send you anything. Good. I will have it in my back pocket so that you guys can unpack it, just bits and bytes. Okay.
Sounds good, man. All right.
All right. Thanks, Dana. All right.
Bye, Dana.
Bye-bye.